He walked along the quiet street, his hands stuffed deep into the pockets of his worn jacket. The winter air bit at his cheeks, and every gust of wind seemed to remind him that he had no real reason to be nervous. Yet here he was, heart hammering, walking toward a cafe he had never visited before. Set up for a blind date by a friend who thought he needed to get back into the world after years of avoiding it. He had agreed almost reluctantly, more out of a sense of obligation to his friend than any real desire. But now, with the sign of the cafe glowing softly in the distance, he felt a twinge of anticipation mixed with unease. He paused outside the glass door, taking a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He didn't even know what to expect. Blind dates were supposed to be awkward, clumsy attempts at conversation, he thought. But he didn't realize how much older he had become, or how much heavier the memories of the past had grown inside him. The thought of meeting someone new, someone who might ask questions about his life, his work, or worse, his personal history, made his stomach twist. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The cafe was warm, a gentle contrast to the cold street outside. Soft music played in the background, the kind that made everything feel calm and intimate. The smell of freshly brewed coffee and baked pastries filled the air. He scanned the room, pretending to look casual while his mind raced with what-ifs. What if they didn't like him? What if the conversation was stilted and awkward? What if somehow he made a fool of himself? He laughed softly at the thought, realizing that years of avoiding personal connections hadn't prepared him for this simple human experience. He found a small table near the window and sat down, smoothing the front of his jacket as if that would make him look more composed. He watched people pass outside, couples holding hands, friends chatting, and parents guiding children along the sidewalk. It all felt like another world to him. He had spent so long in a quiet routine, so long building walls around his heart, that seeing others connect freely made him both ache and envy at the same time. He pulled out his phone and checked the time, almost expecting a message from the person he was supposed to meet. Nothing. He scrolled absent-mindedly through a few notifications, but nothing could distract him from the nervous excitement and lingering hesitation he felt. He told himself he was overthinking, that maybe he should just relax and let the evening happen naturally. He wasn't sure he knew how to do that anymore. A waitress approached, smiling warmly. She asked if he wanted anything to drink. He nodded and ordered a coffee, watching her walk away with a kind of mechanical grace that only made him more aware of the silence that filled the small corners of the cafe. Sitting there waiting, he felt the old familiar pang of solitude, the kind that came from years of carrying his memories and regrets quietly inside him. He took a sip of the hot coffee, letting the warmth seep into his chest, trying to calm the nervousness. He couldn't help but think about why he had avoided people for so long. The past had a way of clinging to him, sneaking into quiet moments like this, uninvited. He remembered the laughter that had once filled his life and the sudden emptiness that followed. He thought about the relationships that had ended abruptly, leaving behind questions that never seemed to have answers. And yet, sitting here, he felt a spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, tonight could be different. That perhaps human connection wasn't entirely lost to him. Time seemed to stretch as he waited. Every minute felt longer than the last. He watched the door open again and again as people came and went, each arrival and departure marking the slow passage of time. He reminded himself to breathe, to not let anxiety take over. He tried to imagine the person he would meet, but every picture his mind painted felt incomplete. All he knew was that this was an opportunity to take a small step forward, a chance to break free from the solitude he had grown accustomed to. He remembered his friend's enthusiastic words earlier that day, how they had insisted that this blind date could be exactly what he needed. The thought both amused and frustrated him. Could a single evening really shift the weight of years? Could one meeting undo the careful walls he had built around his heart? He wasn't sure. And yet, part of him wanted to believe it could. Part of him wanted to feel the spark of something new, something real, even if it was fleeting, as he sipped his coffee. He noticed small details in the cafe that he had never paid attention to before: the pattern of the tiles on the floor, the way the sunlight caught the edges of the tables, the gentle hum of conversation blending with the soft music. These details grounded him, made him aware that he was here, in the present, not lost in memories of the past. And yet those memories were never far away. They hovered at the edges of his thoughts, waiting for moments like this to make their presence known. He remembered the last time he had allowed himself to hope. It had ended in disappointment, leaving scars that were invisible but deeply felt. He had promised himself he wouldn't let that happen again, that he would protect his heart. And yet the idea of this blind date, this small step into the unknown, challenged that promise. He wondered if courage meant facing the fear, even when it was painful. The door opened again, and he looked up automatically, his heart giving a small jump. Each time someone entered, he felt a flicker of anticipation, only to realize it wasn't the person he was supposed to meet. He tried to calm himself, to remind himself that it was okay, that the evening had just begun. He focused on the warmth of the coffee in his hands, the gentle murmur of the other patrons, the softness of the light streaming in through the windows. Memories of the past crept in again, uninvited but persistent. He thought of moments he wished he could reclaim, of laughter that now felt distant, of conversations that had ended abruptly and left a hollow ache. He thought of the people he had lost, not through fault or choice, but simply because life moved in unexpected ways. And yet, despite the heaviness of those memories, he felt a subtle determination. He had survived the pain, endured the loneliness, and here he was, taking a step forward. That, in itself, felt like a small victory. He glanced at his watch, realizing that time was moving faster than it felt. He reminded himself to be patient, that rushing wouldn't help. The moment would arrive, whether he was ready or not, and when it did, he would face it with whatever courage he could muster. He told himself that being honest, being present, was more important than pretending to be someone he wasn't. He wanted this experience to be real, not a performance. A sense of calm began to settle over him as he focused on the present. He noticed the way the light played on the tables, the soft laughter of a nearby group of friends, the comforting aroma of coffee and pastries. He realized that these small details, these simple pleasures, were what life was made of. They were reminders that even in the midst of uncertainty, there was beauty and warmth to be found. He took another sip of his coffee and allowed himself a small smile. The nervousness hadn't vanished, but it had softened, becoming something more like anticipation than fear. He reminded himself that it was okay to feel vulnerable, that it was okay to hope, even if only a little. He had spent too long avoiding life, and tonight he was choosing to step into it, one careful step at a time. He let his mind wander briefly, imagining the conversation that might come. Would they talk about their favorite books, movies, or music? Would there be laughter, awkward pauses, shared smiles? He didn't know, and that uncertainty was both frightening and exhilarating. It was a chance to connect, to discover someone new, to create a memory that was entirely separate from the past. The door opened again. He glanced up, heart still racing, ready for the moment to arrive. He reminded himself to breathe, to be present, to let the experience unfold naturally. He took one last sip of his coffee, savoring the warmth and the comfort it brought. Before setting the cup down gently on the table, in that quiet moment, surrounded by the soft hum of the cafe and the gentle light streaming through the windows, he felt a sense of possibility. The past was still there, lingering in the edges of his mind, but it no longer felt like a weight. Instead, it was a reminder of how far he had come, of the resilience he had cultivated, and of the courage it took to face the unknown. He straightened in his chair, taking a deep breath, and told himself that whatever happened next, he was ready to meet it. The blind date, which had seemed like a small, inconsequential event, now felt like the first step toward something meaningful. And for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope, a quiet excitement for the possibilities that awaited him beyond the door. He hadn't expected to see her. When the door opened and the cold winter light spilled into the cafe, he glanced up automatically, and there she was. It was a moment that froze everything around him. She was sitting alone, a book open in front of her, though she wasn't really reading. Her eyes were distant, thoughtful, and for a heartbeat, He felt the past rush over him like a tidal wave. Memories he had tried so hard to tuck away came flooding back: laughter in the park, whispered conversations late at night, promises made and broken, and the hollow emptiness that followed. He stared, unsure whether to approach or to retreat, the instincts of years of solitude clashing with a sudden, undeniable recognition. She looked up then, and for a moment time seemed to slow. Her eyes met his, widened slightly in surprise, and for an instant neither of them spoke. He felt the old warmth, the pull of familiarity, and the ache that had never fully disappeared. He remembered every detail of Hertha, way her laughter filled a room, the little quirks she had, the way she could make ordinary moments feel magical. And yet he also remembered the pain, the heartbreak, the abrupt ending that had left scars neither time nor distance could erase. He swallowed hard and forced himself to look away, pretending to focus on the cup of coffee in front of him. His hands were shaking slightly as he held it, and he realized he had been gripping the mug far too tightly. The cafe felt smaller, the ambient sounds dimmed, and all he could see was her, sitting there so casually as if she didn't even know the storm she had stirred in his chest. He tried to remind himself to breathe, to slow down, to think rationally, but the memories clung stubbornly to every thought. She closed her book slowly and looked around as if searching for someone. Her eyes met his again, and he saw a flicker of recognition in them. He felt his heart leap and then drop, unsure whether to feel joy or dread. The past and present collided in a confusing swirl, leaving him suspended in a strange, almost surreal moment. He could remember every word they had exchanged years ago, every laugh and every tear. And yet, here they were, separated by time, sitting in the same space, confronted with the choices they had made and the paths they had taken. He wanted to speak, to say something casual, something that wouldn't reveal the depth of the emotions swirling inside him. But words caught in his throat, refusing to form. He realized how much he had imagined this moment over the years, how many times he had rehearsed meeting her again. And yet nothing he had imagined prepared him for the reality. It was overwhelming and fragile all at once. She stood then, as if drawn by the same mixture of curiosity and uncertainty. She approached him slowly, and with each step, the memories pressed heavier on him. He noticed the subtle changes, the way her hair fell slightly differently, the quiet confidence in her posture, and the soft, knowing look in her eyes. It was the same woman, yet not entirely, and he felt a strange combination of familiarity and unfamiliarity that made his chest tighten. "Hi," she said softly, her voice gentle but steady, like a familiar song he hadn't heard in years. He managed a small nod, his lips twitching into a hesitant smile. He could feel his hands start to loosen around the coffee cup, and he realized he had been holding his breath. The moment stretched, and they both struggled to fill it with words. He wanted to ask how she had been, what had happened in the years apart. But he also feared that asking might open doors he wasn't ready to walk through. She seemed to feel the same tension, offering a smile that was cautious, measured, but still warm. It was a delicate dance, a silent acknowledgement of shared history, an unspoken agreement that they would navigate this carefully. They both sat down, a slight distance between them, as if neither wanted to be too close too soon. He studied her face, noticing the lines of experience that had formed over the years, the subtle changes that time had brought. And yet in her eyes, he still saw the spark that had once drawn him in. The same depth of emotion that had made their connection so intense. He felt a pang of longing mixed with a strange relief. She was still here, real, alive, and yet the past hadn't disappeared. It was alive in both of them, coloring every glance, every breath, every hesitation. The conversation started slowly, carefully. They exchanged polite remarks about the weather, the cafe, the coffee, but beneath the surface, every word was loaded with meaning. He could feel the tension in her hands, the slight nervous movement as she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way her eyes occasionally darted away as if afraid to fully confront the emotions in the room. He mirrored her caution, careful not to let his own feelings spill too quickly, knowing that too much too soon could shatter the fragile equilibrium. As they spoke, memories bubbled up, unbidden. He remembered their long walks, the conversations that had stretched into the night, the moments of quiet understanding that had once made him feel invincible. And then he remembered the pain, the arguments that had escalated, the misunderstandings that had driven a wedge between them. It was impossible to separate the joy from the sorrow, the love from the loss, and now it was all here again, palpable in the space between them. She laughed softly at something he said, a sound that transported him instantly back to another time. He realized how much he had missed it, how much he had missed her. But alongside the warmth of recognition came a sting of regret, a reminder of the distance they had created, the lives they had built separately. He wondered if she felt the same mix of longing and sorrow, if she, too, was navigating the treacherous waters of past and present colliding. The conversation shifted gradually, from small talk to tentative glimpses into each other's lives. They spoke of work, of hobbies, of experiences that had shaped them in the years apart. Each revelation was a small thread, weaving a tentative connection that bridged the gap of time. He listened closely, fascinated by the way her life had unfolded, the choices she had made, the lessons she had learned, and he shared carefully, revealing just enough to allow her a window into his own journey. Without exposing the deepest wounds too soon, there was a moment when their hands brushed as she reached for her cup, and the spark of recognition shot through him like a jolt of electricity. Neither pulled away immediately, as if acknowledging that some things, some connections, were not easily broken. He felt the old intimacy resurface in a subtle, quiet way, a gentle reminder that despite everything, the bond they had shared was still present. Lingering beneath the surface, the minutes passed quickly, but each one was dense with emotion. They laughed, sometimes nervously, sometimes freely, and each sound was a bridge back to memories they had once held dear. They paused often, as if carefully measuring each moment, weighing the impact of every word. It was a delicate balance, a careful dance of familiarity and restraint, of longing and caution. He realized that the blind date he had come expecting had transformed into something far more profound. A meeting of past and present, a confrontation with emotions he thought he had left behind. Outside, the world moved on, unaware of the quiet intensity unfolding in the small cafe. People came and went, couples held hands, friends shared jokes, and the snow fell softly against the windows. But inside, time seemed suspended, and he felt as though he had stepped into a fragile bubble where only the two of them existed, where the past and present intertwined in an intricate, delicate pattern. He noticed the subtle changes in her expression, the way her eyes softened when she spoke of a cherished memory, the slight hesitation before she revealed something personal. He realized that she, too, was navigating this delicate moment, balancing recognition with caution, nostalgia with self-preservation. It was a dance he knew well, having performed it countless times in the solitude of his own thoughts. Replaying old scenes and imagining the outcomes he never dared to pursue, as the conversation deepened, he felt a strange sense of clarity. The pain of the past was still present, but it no longer felt as sharp, as consuming. Instead, it was tempered by the awareness of growth, of resilience, of the possibility that they could acknowledge the past without being trapped by it. And in that awareness, he felt a small spark of hope, a quiet courage that allowed him to look at her, to listen, to engage fully in the moment without being overwhelmed by what had come before. She smiled again, a little more freely this time, and he felt the tension ease slightly. The walls he had built around his heart, the careful protections he had maintained for years, seemed less rigid, more permeable. And he understood that this meeting, unexpected and charged with memory, is not about rekindling old romance or seeking closure. It was about presence, about acknowledgement, about the shared understanding that some connections, no matter how distant, continue to shape who we are. The afternoon light shifted, casting long shadows across the cafe floor. He realized they'd been talking for hours, yet the conversation had only scratched the surface of what they could explore. But that was okay. This moment, fragile and charged with unspoken emotion, was enough. It was enough to remind him that life was not solely about moving forward blindly, but about recognizing the threads of connection that persist, that linger, that inform the present in subtle, profound ways as he took a deep breath and looked at her. He felt the past and present coexisting in a delicate harmony. The pain of separation, the weight of memories, the ache of longing, all of it was there, but it no longer held him captive. Instead, it had become a bridge, a way to engage with the moment fully, honestly, and humanly. He realized that in this small cafe, amid the quiet hum of life around them, he had found a rare gift, the opportunity to see someone from his past, not as a source of pain, but as a reminder of his capacity to feel, to connect, and to grow. And in that understanding, he allowed himself a moment of quiet gratitude for the memories, for the lessons, for the unexpected collision of past and present that had brought them together in this heat. Felt a strange mix of relief and tension as they continued to sit across from each other. The initial shock had faded, replaced by a fragile familiarity that neither had expected to feel so strongly. The conversation had begun with small talk, but now it was inching towards something deeper, more delicate. Every word seemed to carry weight, every pause a hidden question. He could feel the old bond between them, subtle yet undeniable. Like a melody remembered after years of silence, they spoke about their routines, their jobs, the simple details of daily life that often go unnoticed but are somehow revealing when shared with someone who once knew you deeply. He noticed how she had changed over the years, more composed, more self-assured, yet the same warmth lingered in her gestures, in the tilt of her head when she laughed, in the softness of her voice. He realized how much he had missed this, just being near someone who understood him without the need for explanations. Someone who had once shared the same space in his life. She shared stories from the years apart, some light and amusing, others tinged with struggle and learning. He listened carefully, sometimes nodding, sometimes offering a quiet smile, feeling the rhythm of her life intersect with his own in unexpected ways. It was a delicate dance, navigating the memories that surfaced with each detail. Balancing curiosity with caution, longing with restraint, he could feel the old ache of the past. But it was tempered now by the awareness of who they had both become. When she asked about his life, he hesitated. He had spent so long keeping people at a distance that opening up felt like stepping into a vulnerable space he wasn't sure he could navigate. But as he spoke, he realized it wasn't as painful as he feared. He told her about small successes, quiet achievements, and even the moments of doubt and difficulty that had shaped him. She listened intently, her eyes reflecting understanding, a mirror to the unspoken acknowledgement that they had both endured their separate journeys with resilience. The conversation drifted to shared memories. Those moments that had once defined them. He mentioned a rainy afternoon spent walking without an umbrella, the laughter that followed when they both got soaked to the bone. She smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners, and he felt a pang of nostalgia that was both sweet and bitter. They both laughed softly, gentle recognition of the past that neither could fully relive but could appreciate in the present. They paused, letting the silence settle comfortably around them. He realized how rare such moments were, where words were not necessary, and presence alone spoke volumes. The air between them seemed charged with emotion, a quiet electricity that neither could ignore. He noticed the subtle tension in her shoulders, the slight tremor in her hands, and he understood that she was feeling the same mixture of excitement, nervousness, and caution that he was. It was a human connection, raw and unfiltered, born from years of distance, and yet revived effortlessly. As the cafe grew busier, they both became aware of the world outside their small bubble. Conversations from other tables, the clinking of cups, the hum of movement all faded into the background as they focused on each other. He realized how much he had longed for this kind of connection. The simple act of sharing space and stories with someone who mattered. It was a reminder that life was not solely about survival, but about presence, about allowing oneself to feel and be felt. She laughed at a story he shared, and he felt a warmth spread through him, a reminder that some bonds are never truly broken. Yet, underneath the laughter, he felt the undercurrent of unspoken questions. What if things had been different? What if they had stayed in each other's lives? He knew these questions were dangerous, but they were unavoidable. The past had a way of seeping into the present, coloring moments with what-ifs and regrets. he found himself asking questions too, carefully probing without overstepping. He wanted to understand her life, her experiences, the choices she had made. Every answer she gave revealed more about the person she had become, and he found himself admiring her resilience, her grace, the way she carried herself despite the challenges she had faced. And yet in her eyes, he saw the same vulnerabilities he remembered, the traces of the girl he once knew, the one who had laughed and cried and dreamed beside him. They discussed the small joys of life, the routines and habits that gave them comfort. He spoke of long walks in the park, quiet evenings with music, the little pleasures that made life bearable. She shared her own routines, the hobbies and moments that brought her peace. It was a slow, careful exchange, but it felt intimate, as though they were rediscovering each other piece by piece. Every story, every detail, was a step toward understanding, a step toward reconnecting with the humanity they had once shared at one point. She leaned forward slightly, resting her chin on her hand, and he felt a rush of recognition and nostalgia. He remembered countless evenings spent in similar positions, sharing stories, debating ideas, laughing until their sides hurt. The familiarity was comforting and painful at the same time. He realized that this meeting was not just about rekindling old memories, but about acknowledging the complexity of the past, the growth they had both experienced, and the possibility of moving forward with that, its understanding. He noticed the subtle gestures she made, the way she sipped her coffee, the tilt of her head, the soft way she laughed. He realized how deeply he had memorized these small details all those years ago. They were ingrained in his memory, reminders of a connection that had been interrupted but never entirely erased. And now, seeing them in the present, he felt a mixture of joy and sadness, an understanding that the past was both a source of pain and a foundation for growth. The conversation turned to more serious topics, moments when they had struggled, times when they had faced difficulties alone. He spoke of challenges at work, moments of self-doubt, and the loneliness that had accompanied him over the years. She shared her own experiences, the obstacles she had encountered, and the resilience she had developed. Each revelation was met with empathy, a silent acknowledgement of the strength required to navigate life's unpredictability. It was a reminder that they were both human, flawed and fragile, but capable of growth and connection. He felt a shift in the energy between them, a subtle softening, as if the walls they had built around their hearts were beginning to crumble. The past was still present, but it no longer felt like a cage. Instead, it was a bridge, a way to connect, to understand, and to heal. He realized that this meeting was not about reliving the past, but about engaging with it honestly, allowing it to inform the present without dominating it. They laughed again, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes freely, and each sound was a balm to the tension that had initially gripped them. They shared stories of the unexpected, moments of serendipity and surprise, small victories and minor mishaps. Each exchange was a thread, weaving a tapestry of shared experience that was delicate but resilient. He felt a quiet gratitude for this unexpected encounter, for the opportunity to reconnect in a space that was both safe and charged with emotion outside. The day began to fade into evening, casting long shadows across the cafe. The light filtered through the windows, highlighting the contours of their faces, the subtle expressions that spoke volumes. He realized that time had passed unnoticed, each minute dense with conversation, emotion, and shared history. It was a rare gift, this intersection of past and present, a moment that was both fleeting and profound. She asked a question about a shared memory, a detail that had lingered in both their minds for years. He responded, adding a layer he had never shared before, a nuance that only deepened their understanding of each other. They smiled, the kind of smile that carries recognition, empathy, and the bittersweet awareness of what had been lost. It was a quiet human moment, unremarkable to anyone else but profoundly meaningful to them. He realized that this meeting was teaching him something important, that the past, no matter how painful, can coexist with the present in a way that allows growth, connection, and understanding. It was not about rekindling old feelings blindly, nor about erasing past pain. It was about acknowledging the depth of shared experience, the resilience of the human heart, and the capacity to engage honestly with another person, as the evening approached. They both became aware of the need to eventually part ways. Yet, the thought of leaving was tempered by the richness of the encounter. The way the past had been revisited and honored, the way the present had been embraced fully. He felt a quiet sense of accomplishment, a relief that they had navigated the delicate balance of recognition, emotion, and restraint without faltering. They stood, exchanging a lingering glance that spoke volumes without words. The connection remained, a subtle but undeniable presence that neither could ignore. He felt the warmth of shared understanding, the acknowledgement of a past that had shaped them both, and the quiet hope that life could still hold moments of unexpected clarity and connection. As he stepped out into the cool evening air, he felt the past settle gently behind him, no longer a burden, but a companion in his journey forward. The encounter had been unexpected, challenging, and profoundly human. It had reminded him of the depth of feeling, the fragility of life, and the resilience of the heart. And as he walked down the quiet street, carried with him the knowledge that some connections, though interrupted, are never truly lost. They linger, waiting for the right moment to remind us of who we are and what we are capable of feeling. The air between them had shifted in a subtle, almost imperceptible way. What had started as polite conversation and cautious observation was now transforming into something more real, more raw. He noticed it in the way her eyes softened when she spoke, in the slight tilt of her head, and the quiet pauses that seemed to carry more meaning than the words themselves. He felt a tension that was no longer uncomfortable, but alive with possibility, a delicate dance between recognition, vulnerability, and understanding. She spoke of moments she had never shared with anyone else. Memories that had been tucked away carefully, afraid of judgment or misunderstanding. He listened intently, allowing her words to sink in, aware that these were pieces of her soul she had entrusted to him, even if indirectly. In turn, he shared the quiet struggles of his own life, the battles with loneliness, the small victories, and the private defeats. Each revelation was met with empathy, a silent acknowledgement of the pain, growth, and humanity they both carried. The conversation shifted fluidly, as if they were navigating a river together, moving from calm waters into moments of turbulence and back again. He felt the old ache of past wounds surface, but it was tempered by her presence, by the shared understanding that they had both endured and learned. He realized that this encounter was not about reliving old romance, but about confronting truth, facing vulnerability, and honoring the past without being trapped by it. There was a moment when she hesitated, her gaze flicking to the window as if to gather courage. He felt his chest tighten, anticipating what might come next. Then, softly, she began to speak of the day their paths had diverged, the misunderstandings, the choices that had led to separation. Her words were careful but honest, and he felt the weight of years lifted slightly as they acknowledged what had once hurt them so deeply. The act of speaking aloud made the pain less raw, less consuming, and allowed a space for compassion to enter. He responded in kind, sharing his own reflections on that difficult time. He spoke of regrets, of lessons learned, and of the ways he had carried their shared history quietly in his heart. She listened with patience, her eyes filled with understanding, and he felt a quiet relief. For the first time in years, the past felt manageable, not a burden, but a bridge, connecting their shared experiences to the person they had become. They both laughed softly, a gentle acknowledgement that despite the heaviness of their conversation, they could still find lightness, still find moments of ease and joy. He noticed the familiar rhythm in her laughter, the cadence that he had once known so well, and it filled him with both nostalgia and hope. The pain of lost time was tempered by the awareness that they were here now, fully present, and capable of engaging honestly. The cafe around them continued its quiet bustle, but they were insulated from it, cocooned in the intensity of their shared presence. He observed her gestures, the small movements that conveyed emotion, the way her fingers traced the edge of her cup, the tilt of her head when she considered a memory, the soft exhale that followed a particularly difficult recollection. These details reminded him of the intimacy they had once shared, and he realized how much he had longed for this kind of connection, this understanding without pretense, At one point, a memory surfaced a rainy afternoon they had spent together. Laughing as they dodged puddles and shared an umbrella that barely covered them both, he mentioned it, and she smiled, her eyes reflecting a mixture of amusement and tenderness. They talked about it for a moment, each adding details that the other had forgotten, filling in gaps, laughing softly at the imperfections of memory. It was a gentle reminder that their history was not perfect, but it was theirs. And that fact alone held significance. He felt a subtle shift in himself, a realization that the walls he had built around his heart were no longer necessary in her presence. She was not a threat, not a reminder of pain to be avoided, but a reflection of the shared humanity they had cultivated together. The act of being honest, of allowing vulnerability to surface, was liberating. He could feel the tension release, placed by a quiet clarity and a sense of presence he had not known in years. They spoke of dreams, both realized and deferred, of hopes for the future, and of the lessons they had learned along the way. He shared moments of self-discovery, instances when he had faced fear or doubt, and she responded with empathy, offering insights from her own experiences. The conversation was a delicate interplay of listening and speaking, of revealing and absorbing. Each moment deepening their understanding of each other, he realized that the encounter was teaching him something profound, that the past, no matter how painful, could coexist with the present in a way that allowed growth, connection, and understanding. It was not about rekindling old feelings blindly, nor about erasing past pain. It was about acknowledging the depth of shared experience, the resilience of the human heart, and the capacity to engage honestly with another person. The act of being fully present, fully attentive, was in itself a form of healing. As the afternoon progressed, they both became aware of the subtle shifts in emotion, the ebb and flow of vulnerability and strength. They laughed at the absurdities of life, shared quiet moments of reflection, and occasionally allowed a moment of silence to linger, comfortable and unforced. These silences spoke volumes, conveying understanding, respect, and the acknowledgement that some things did not need to be spoken aloud. He noticed the way her eyes held a quiet intensity when she spoke of her experiences, the slight tremor in her voice when she shared moments of difficulty, and the gentle exhale that followed. Each of these small gestures carried meaning, a silent communication that transcended words. He realized that this was the essence of human connection, noticing, understanding, and responding to the unspoken language that exists between people who have shared history. They discussed forgiveness, both of others and of themselves, and he felt a weight lift as they acknowledged the necessity of letting go. She spoke of moments when she had been hurt, and he shared his own experiences of pain and reconciliation. The act of mutual acknowledgement created a bond, a sense of trust that had been years in the making. It was not immediate, but it was genuine, and it allowed both of them to breathe a little easier, to feel a little lighter. He remembered the countless nights he had spent alone, replaying memories, imagining conversations, wishing for closure that never came. And now, here it was, unfolding naturally, without forcing, without expectation. The past and present were meeting in a way that was neither painful nor overwhelming, but insightful, healing, and profoundly human. He realized that moments like these are rare, and the value of them is immeasurable. They talked about kindness, about the small gestures that make life bearable, and the ways people touch each other's lives in subtle ways. He shared stories of strangers who had shown unexpected generosity, and she spoke of moments when she had been helped by people she would never see again. These stories, simple as they were, revealed a shared understanding of human goodness, of the connections that form quietly, invisibly, but leave lasting impressions. He felt a sense of gratitude that he had not expected. Gratitude for her presence, for the opportunity to engage fully, for the ability to confront and embrace the past without being consumed by it. He realized that life was not about avoiding pain, but about navigating it with honesty and courage, and that the capacity to connect with another person so deeply was one of life's most profound gifts. As the evening approached, he noticed the change in light, the long shadows stretching across the cafe. He felt a gentle sadness at the thought that the moment might end, yet it was tempered by the richness of the experience. They had shared stories, emotions, laughter, and reflection. They had confronted past pain, acknowledged growth, and allowed themselves to be vulnerable. The encounter was complete, not because it had resolved everything, but because it had created a space for understanding, compassion, and connection. They stood to leave, moving with a quiet grace, a recognition of the intimacy they had just navigated. The conversation had been intense, meaningful, and emotionally charged, yet it left them both with a sense of calm, a clarity that comes from being truly seen and heard. He felt the lingering warmth of shared humanity, the acknowledgement of pain and growth, and the quiet hope that life could hold moments of profound connection without demanding perfection. Outside, the cold air greeted them, but it no longer felt harsh. It felt alive, refreshing, a reminder that life continued beyond the cafe walls, beyond the past they had revisited. He realized that this encounter had been transformative, not in a dramatic or sudden way, but in the quiet, human way that matters most. It reminded him of the power of presence, empathy, and courage. They exchanged a lingering look, one that spoke volumes without words. A silent acknowledgement of shared experience, understanding, and humanity. He felt the weight of old pain ease slightly, replaced by a sense of clarity, gratitude, and quiet hope. The encounter had not erased the past, but it had reshaped it, allowed it to coexist with the present, and opened the door to a more compassionate and connected future. As he walked away, he carried with him the memory of the encounter, the lessons it imparted, and the reminder that human connection, in all its complexity and fragility, is one of life's most enduring and profound gifts. The night had settled softly over the city, the quiet hum of life continuing as he walked along the empty streets. The encounter in the cafe still lingered in his mind, vivid and alive, filling him with a mixture of relief, nostalgia, and quiet hope. He realized that this meeting, unexpected and intense, had opened a door he thought he had long closed. It had reminded him that the past, no matter how painful, could coexist with the present in a way that allowed growth and understanding. He replayed the conversation in his mind, each word and pause carrying weight and meaning. He remembered her expressions, the subtle gestures that revealed more than words ever could, the softness in her eyes when she acknowledged the shared history between them. He felt a strange sense of gratitude, not for the ending of the pain, but for the presence of honesty, empathy, and connection. The encounter had been a mirror, reflecting the complexity of human experience and the resilience of the heart as he walked. He thought about the journey that had brought him to this point, the years of solitude, the careful walls he had built around his heart, the moments of doubt and despair. All of it had led him here. And yet, despite the weight of the past, he felt lighter, as if the act of confronting what had once hurt him so deeply had allowed a part of him to breathe again. The cafe, the conversation, the shared vulnerability, they had become a turning point. A reminder that life is not only about moving forward blindly, but about engaging fully with each moment. He thought about her, wondering if she felt the same quiet relief, the same mixture of nostalgia and hope. He imagined her walking home, reflecting on the words they had shared, the memories they had revisited, and the subtle, profound understanding that had emerged between them. He realized that this encounter was not about rekindling old feelings or seeking closure in the dramatic sense, but about acknowledging truth, allowing vulnerability, and embracing human connection in its purest form. The streets were quiet, lit softly by streetlights casting long shadows that danced along the pavement. He felt the cool air brush against his face, carrying with it a sense of renewal, of movement, of possibility. The weight of years of isolation seemed to lift, replaced by a subtle awareness that life, despite its challenges and disappointments, still offered moments of profound connection and clarity. The encounter had reminded him that even amidst uncertainty and pain, there are opportunities to engage fully with the human experience. He reflected on the lessons of the day, the ways in which the past had shaped him, and the ways in which the present had offered him a chance to reconnect with both his own humanity and the humanity of another. He realized that pain and joy, sorrow and laughter, memory and presence, these are not separate but intertwined, creating the tapestry of a life lived fully. And tonight, in that cafe, he'd witnessed the weaving of those threads in a way that was both subtle and profound. He paused for a moment, leaning against a lamppost, allowing himself to take in the quiet beauty of the night. He thought about the fragility of life, the fleeting nature of moments, and the importance of presence. The encounter had reminded him that human connection is delicate, requiring attention, care, and honesty. It had reminded him that the past does not need to be a burden, but can serve as a guide, a teacher, and a source of empathy as he continued walking. He felt a quiet sense of clarity about the choices he had made and the path he was on. The meeting had not changed the past, nor had it erased the pain, but it had illuminated the resilience and capacity for connection that exists within each person. He felt a renewed commitment to engage fully with life, to allow himself to be present, to notice and cherish the small moments of human connection that often go unnoticed. He thought about the possibilities that lay ahead, the small steps he could take to rebuild relationships, to foster new connections, and to embrace the moments of vulnerability that make life rich and meaningful. The encounter had shown him that even when life seems marked by loss and separation, there is always the potential for understanding, compassion, and connection. He felt a sense of hope, not naive or fleeting, but grounded in the experience of confronting the past honestly and with openness. He reflected on the subtle emotions that had arisen during their conversation, the laughter, the quiet acknowledgement of shared pain, the mutual respect and understanding. He realized that these moments, small yet profound, were the essence of what it means to be human. They are not always grand or dramatic, but they carry the weight of experience, empathy, and presence. And in recognizing and honoring them, he felt a sense of completion, a quiet satisfaction that comes from being fully engaged with life. The city continued around him, lights twinkling in the distance, the sounds of life moving softly through the night. He felt a connection not only to her but to the broader human experience, a recognition that everyone carries memories, pain, hope, and the desire for connection. He felt a profound gratitude for the encounter, for the lessons it had imparted, and for the reminder that life is most meaningful when approached with openness, honesty, and presence. He allowed himself a moment of reflection, thinking about the journey of the past few hours, from the initial shock of seeing her, to the unfolding conversation, to the quiet acknowledgments and shared understanding. Each moment had contributed to a profound sense of insight and growth. He realized that human connection is not always about resolution or closure, but about the willingness to engage honestly and empathetically, to recognize shared experiences, and to honor the past without being imprisoned by it as he neared his own home. He felt a quiet determination to carry the lessons of the day forward, to be more present, more attentive, more open to the subtle and profound connections that exist around him, to recognize that life, in all its complexity and imperfection, offers opportunities for understanding, compassion, and growth at every turn. And he felt a quiet hope that these moments, small yet significant, would continue to shape his life in ways both gentle and profound. He arrived at his doorstep, pausing for a moment to take in the quiet of the night. The encounter had left an indelible mark on him, a reminder of the resilience of the human heart, the importance of presence, and the potential for connection even after years of distance and pain. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the experience, for the opportunity to engage honestly and empathetically, and for the subtle yet profound understanding that had emerged from their shared moments. He entered his home, closing the door behind him, and allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. The past, with all its complexity and pain, was no longer a weight, but a companion that had guided him to this moment of clarity and insight. He realized that life is not about erasing the past or seeking perfect resolution, but about engaging fully, honestly, and empathetically with each moment, with each person, and with oneself. He settled into his chair, the quiet of the night surrounding him, and felt a profound sense of peace. The encounter had reminded him of the value of presence, empathy, and understanding, and of the capacity for human connection to heal, illuminate, and enrich life. He reflected on the moments of laughter, reflection, vulnerability, and recognition that had occurred, and felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that he had embraced them fully. As he drifted toward sleep later that night, he carried with him the lessons of the day, the memory of the encounter, and the quiet hope that life would continue to offer moments of connection, understanding, and presence. The past had been acknowledged, the present fully engaged, and the future filled with possibility. And in that quiet, human moment, he felt whole, grounded, and ready to embrace whatever life might bring next.